Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and we believe that the West, categorized by North America, Canada, the US, parts of Western Europe, and Australasia, share the common goal of being able to keep rising hegemonic powers and areas of tension, particularly against Russia and China, at bay, and we think that it's in their interest to truly be able to get support within the region and preserve the hegemonic power that they ultimately have. Make no mistake, this is not an actor motion, nor is this a policy, but we think that it's fair to give the intuition that these Western states have that particular agenda, and the fact that they're likely to do it in a better way, in a more democratic way, than that of sketchy authoritarian regimes like Russia and China will be a net good for the particular world. This debate is a game of geopolitical chess and a race to be able to get the most amount of allies, especially those with key geographical features to be able to put a check against Russia. And we think that uniquely, these former Soviet states, such as what is indicated in the debate or in the motion, is uniquely what we're going to contend with. A few key points of framing we think are important to this debate. Number one, this is a value judgment debate and not about do we have the resources or the capacity to support or not support, but uniquely about the extent of support and the impacts that that would have geopolitically for those individual states and for the world in general. So we want this debate to be about whether or not we should do it, cause its value judgment. In relation to that, we think that the latter part of the motion, the nuance to free and fair referenda, can be interpreted in one of two ways. One, free and fair referenda happening within the West, who on average are mostly democratic, which means that there are certain mechanisms through the democratic process to be able to vote to what extent and what specific countries who were former breakaway Soviet states who are going to be helping and supporting, meaning there's going to be some sort of bi-party consensus or some sort of mechanism to figure that out. Or it can also be interpreted to some extent as free and fair referenda also happening within these breakaway states, right? Who also have their own form of government. Meaning, we have to assume that on both sides, there's going to be some sort of agreement to that particular regard, and the debate should primarily revolve around those particular instances. We can assume some degree of collaboration and consent. Second is that support can be quite nuanced, right? It can be proportional, meaning it depends on the extent of collaboration that we're going to do it. It's not going to be like oh my god, we're going to put billions of dollars right away into them without vibe checking it first. It can also be conditional to an extent, meaning not just proportional, but also conditional on a basis of certain things that they agree with, which can be hashed out, the details of which are a separate debate altogether. And C, it can be hard and soft support, meaning we're going to bite the widest burden and say that we're willing to be able to give them things like direct funding and military support, or also soft things like being able to influence what's happening within that particular area. The last thing is to be able to understand a preemption of the other side, right? Because OP might probably run this generic idea of anti-US rhetoric and how look at these instances, A, B, C, it's been bad, the US is kind of a dick. But I think the very simple push we're going to say is that on average, on instances, US intervention is better than them being used as a political pawn by Russia and China with those particular regards, meaning, of course, none of this will be perfect. Of course, everyone has an agenda, but we rather have a Western particular agenda. Meaning, it's particularly important to note where they are geopolitically. Because what we've seen in Trump MAGA Season 2, going full on domestic and protectionist and isolationist, is kind of fucking ass with the advent of the global markets getting wrecked by reciprocal tariffs. Meaning, we understand that maybe historically, these particular states they might characterize them to be independent or neutral, but given the changing world order and changing political landscape, it's quite important that alliances have to be done now and have to be able to do that currently in order to be able to hedge against risk. The first impact and mechanism to understand is asking a question. Why would these breakaway states want it? We think that it's only a matter of time until different nation states have to be dragged into this particular conflict. Case in point, the deadlock that we see happening currently within Russia and Ukraine, which has lasted over 3 particular years already, but uniquely, there's some sort of strategic value for the West to be able to flank Russia in their particular territories in order to be able to stick it to them and in order to be able to hedge against other forms of escalation or them being able to get more support from China and vice versa. Meaning uniquely, if you take a look at the map and take a look at where East Ukraine is and where Ossetia is, it uniquely provides a key access point to Russia. And we're not saying that, oh my fuck, we're gonna be able to invade or anything. We're just saying being able to have some sort of eyes to be able to send drones and some sort of show of force with that region in and of itself is going to be good for the West and on average for the world to be able to keep them in check. The second question I'm going to answer is asking why exactly would this be good for the rest of the world and for the United States? And I think it's quite simple. It's because given the shady things that we're seeing happen all over the world with bond markets like Japan under pressure and inflation continuing to potentially still be a problem, we need to be able to have a shift towards collaboration. And uniquely, the nuance to these Soviet states or the breakaway states is that for far too long they've been alienated and we want them to be able to have some sort of alternative for trade, for exposure, for information amidst the very changing political world order given the rising volatility of what's happening in China and in Russia in order to be able to make these meet. So, we think that things may not be perfect, things can escalate, bad things can happen, but at least the lens of the US coming in to be able to help and the West is on average a better net good. We are very proud to open this debate and stand on side proposition.